Whitehead was also a very important part of the birth of the holistic or organismic philosophy of nature. The old mechanistic materialist view was that we should explain everything in terms of the smallest things. The atoms are the ultimate physical reality, and therefore reducing chemistry to atoms is the way chemistry should go. Reducing life to molecules is the way biology should go. Reduce it to the smallest things in living organisms, molecules. So it's a matter of reducing to the smallest, because smallest is best. And that's why molecular biology has an enormously high status within biology, because it's dealing with the smallest bits of living organisms, genes, proteins, etc. But what Whitehead pointed out is that atoms are not the ultimate particles. Atoms themselves are structures of activity with a nucleus and electron orbitals, and they're all processes. Atoms are processes, molecules are processes, and that molecules are like organisms. An atom is like a microscopic organism. A molecule is an organism composed of atoms which are whole, have a wholeness that goes beyond the sum of the parts. In the same way, in organisms, a cell is self-organizing. It has its own membrane, its own limits, its own structure and activity. But cells can be organized in tissues where there's a wholeness that's more than the sum of the parts. They're in organs, in organisms, in societies of organisms like flocks of birds or schools of fish, in ecosystems, in planets. And planets are within solar systems, which again have a wholeness that's more than the sum of the parts, and solar systems are within galaxies. So we have organisms at all levels of complexity, and you can't reduce them all to ultimate particles. And the bottom dropped out of the atom long ago, and attempt to explain everything in terms of the ultimate particle is no longer the way science works. I mean, it never really has worked that way. You don't try and explain the facts of sociology or the facts of physiology in terms of hadrons or electrons and so on. You explain them in terms of physiological processes. Science, in effect, although not in theory, is actually holistic. You study things at their own level. Well, if we take this view, then we see that this holistic view of nature suggests that self-organizing systems have a kind of mind or consciousness or an organizing capacity, their own purposes, their own goals, which in modern dynamics are called attractors. And it also shows that certain kinds of things are not self-organizing and are not likely to be conscious. An atom, a molecule, a cell, a tissue, an organ, a flock of birds, a galaxy, a solar system, have a wholeness that's more than the sum of the parts and may have some kind of mind dealing with their possible future actions. But things which are mere composites are not likely to be conscious in this way. This is also a point that Tononi makes in his integrated information theory. A table, a chair, a computer, a car, a rock that's just rolled down a mountain are not self-organizing wholes. If they were, we wouldn't need factories. We'd grow them on farms instead of making them in factories by putting components together. So the very worst possible model for nature is a machine, because a machine is made out of parts that are put together in factories according to a design, an intelligent design which is outside the machinery, and fulfilling human purposes which are also outside the machinery. Organisms have their own organizing capacity within them. They're self-organizing, their own purposes, and